All right, we're back. This is episode, I don't know, 5 or 6 at this point. I've already lost track. DenSecure Cast, special guest here, Morrissey, to talk about interesting topic that you may have seen in the news. Well, I don't know, InfoSec, Twitter, and around the interwebs about allegedly, I'm gonna have to use allegedly a lot so we don't get sued. Fraudulent SOC vendor, well, not just SOC, ISO and others, called Security. But we're not going to start there. We're going to start with kind of having Ali give us a rundown of this type of compliance, why it matters, and kind of the basics. So without further ado, Ali.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I watched your last video and I heard you hyping me up a little bit. So hopefully I can live up to that hype that you've said. You did also mention a party hat. I didn't receive one in the mail to potentially wear here today, but you did mention it in the last video. Sadly, I didn't receive one to wear, but thanks for having me on. Just to give a quick intro of myself so folks know who I am. I'm Morrissey, Senior Manager at Wolf & Company. I'm within our technology assurance space. I've been with the firm 10 years now at this point. Started out my career here as an IT generalist, doing regular IT audits, IT reviews, things of that nature. Moved a little bit into the data analytics space, doing model validations, and then ultimately moved into the tech assurance space, which essentially does all of our technology-related attestation engagements, and that includes SOC reporting. So I help co-lead our SOC service line, which includes SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC readiness, so on and so forth. And like Joe said, I wanted to talk a little bit today about the Delve situation and kind of what's been going on there. But in reality, I want to start first just with SOC reports and kind of what they are and why we do them and why they're important and things like that. So a SOC report, for everyone who doesn't know, stands for System and Organization Controls Report. It is an attestation report. I want to be clear that it's an attestation report. A lot of people like to say SOC certification. Technically, SOC is not a certification. You get a high trust certification, you get an ISO certification, you get a PCI certification. You do not get a SOC certification. You get a SOC attestation report. And the difference there is, as an attestation, the firm that is doing the attestation is giving their own opinion. So when Wolf does a SOC report, we are giving our opinion about what's being, put on the page, essentially. When you're doing those other types of certifications, sometimes there's a governing body that is giving the compliance or the certification to say, yes, you're doing that. So not necessarily the CPA firm's opinion. So an attestation, a SOC report, gives our attestation, our opinion on this.
I feel like the term attestation is going to matter significantly when we start talking about Delve itself.
Exactly, yeah. And again, as this situation, we'll call it, has progressed, you'll see over LinkedIn, a lot of people are making this very important distinction that it's not a certification, it's an attestation, because it's really been brought up as a part of this. So again, I just wanted to kind of make that clear to everyone. But the biggest thing about these reports is, and I think, Alex, you mentioned it on last call, but it's to build trust. The thing is to have an independent body, someone independent of your company, of your firm, come in and say, yes, you are doing the things you need to be doing to give your customers or your users confidence in what they're doing with you or with your platform or with your services, right? Like, it's all about trust. That's like probably the biggest word that has to come into play here. So it's important that folks are, if you're a company or you're a firm that needs this type of situation, you work with a firm that you trust so that your customers and your users can trust. And it's this big trust circle, you could say, right? Like, everyone needs to trust each other in this situation. And so that, again, I think that's the biggest thing. You need to get, a lot of companies, firms need to get these attestation reports, these trust reports, to give their customers user confidence. It's used a lot to gain new users or new customers. New customers need to feel that before they even give you their data or their time or their money, they can trust you and they can trust with what you're doing. So a lot of it's used as a marketing tool to get new folks in the door, get new customers in the door, or it's also just an audit requirement a lot of the times. Financial audits come in, financial auditors come in, they ask, do you have a SOC report for this system you're utilizing? So again, it's a necessity sometimes as well. And again, it's just to gain comfort around what you need to do. So that's really kind of where its importance comes in. And again, it's the importance of having a third party saying all of this about you rather than you just trying to sell yourself to your customers. So, yeah.
Makes sense. So I guess, we do this work, it's very, mostly human in the loop, not, a ton of good enough to me, looks good enough to me, automation, AI, whatever, doing a lot of this stuff at this point. Whereas I know that a lot of other shops that do this that are, let's just say, cheaper,
yeah,
do that, are doing that. That's not to say there's no place for automation, AI, whatever, right? But I mean, there's a lot of places, like, I don't want to call them shops, but like there's a lot of places that will do this for, well, put it this way, a lot cheaper than we will do it. And right. And so I guess I'm curious, why are places like, why are places like that places that you should think twice about choosing before? I mean, it's kind of like with penetration testing, if you Google penetration testing services, I wouldn't be surprised if a few of the top results were like $500 pen test. Like we know what you're going to get with that. And it's not much. Right. Yeah. So like, I don't want to, this isn't supposed to be like a marketing or a sales pitch podcast, right? But like, there is truth to like, what is the difference, I guess you could say, like, without being, I guess, too sales pitchy.
And I don't want to like just bash on those types of companies and those services too, right? Because they do provide value and they can provide value. And we like to call them like compliance tools or compliance shops that can like help you get ready for the SOC audit or these other types of audits you need to do. And it's really supposed to be used, a readiness, for example. Yeah. And it should be used as a tool. People put too much reliance on it, but if you use it in the right way, then you can get good results. So I don't want to like just bash on them because they do have some good qualities to them. They help to like track people's recurring tasks they need to do, right? They track compliance with security awareness training, sign-offs on things, again, it's to help supplement your controls that are in place and help you. They offer policy templates and risk assessment templates. But the important part is for these companies and these firms that are using these to really use them as templates, right? Take them and don't just put your name on it and say, yep, good to go, like stamp, right? Like you need to manipulate them or edit them to be about your company or your firm. So again, I don't want
to critical piece when we talk about Delph.
So I want to just be clear that like, yes, there is some positives to this, but again, we've seen some negatives to it. Again, it's a lot of these tools are trying to do a lot more with automation, which again is fine. But as we all know with automation, it can only go so far, or it can give you false positives, right? So there's the importance of still needing to have the human touch, have the human element in relation to these audits, these readiness assessments, getting prepared for the audit. There still needs to be that human touch there to make sure you're getting an accurate, representation and a tailored representation to your environment and your company and things like that. So, and again, that's where the cost increase comes in. People cost money. It takes some time to do these things, sit with folks, understand their environment, understand their technologies, their processes, et cetera, et cetera. Time is money. So, that's where it ends up being. You can't do everything through automation or through, AI and, APIs and things like that. There has to be a human touch. And that's where, unfortunately, the cost goes up a little bit.
Yeah. There's two things that I thought were interesting in a discussion here. So, Joe, you mentioned the low cost provider for like a pen test shop. You can find a $500 pen test on Google. And, I think part of that is definitely true in the general consulting space.
$500 an hour.
Sure. But I think what happened in this scenario too is that, Ali, you were mentioning the overpromising of the tools potentially, and these are big names that the SOC attestations were being provided to. Like if you Googled the companies that they work for, it kind of made this trickle effect where, this company's using them. They're huge. We should probably trust them as well because look how fast they got their SOC report. We could probably do the same here. Likely enough, I don't think that's happened in the pen test space, which is, I guess, is a good thing. I haven't heard of a.
It's also not at test
company. Like a company that has that high of a reputation and been like, hey, look at all these different companies that are working with the top 500 or the new startups kind of thing. But that's, I think it's an over-promising and delivering to some extent, and that marketing tool that it leverages. I'm not surprised that we got to.
This is exactly what I was going to say, or ask rather, is, and I don't want to blame the victims, but we'll get into the Delve thing in a second, right? But like when people use these lower cost providers that basically serve as like a hub as opposed to a trusted whatever, right? Is the marketing such that they're like, you can get we will get you a SOC report in this very short period of time, and that is notwithstanding the quality that's going to go into it, or like how much of it is it on the actual end user, so to speak, meaning the places that are hiring these compliance shops or whatever.
Yeah,
how much is it on them to do their due diligence, especially if they're a startup and they've never been through it before and they don't know how to do that?
Yeah, and that's the case. And again, if I'm a startup, I can see the appeal, right? Get your SOC 2 certification in weeks, at $5,000, right? Like that, and they're guaranteeing you're going to pass.
Are they really that low with some of these?
Some of them are that low. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and so they're making guarantees or promises, right? That seem from a CPA firm who's been doing this for years, or other firms that we've talked to, right? It seems so unrealistic. It's just like, how is that possible? Like that's the response I hear a lot from my peers, is like, just what, like how, and again, it's a guarantee that you will pass. No one can guarantee that, right? Especially if you haven't even gone through one before. How can you guarantee that a place is going to pass the audit when you haven't done anything yet? So yes, the marketing it's appealing to people who don't quite know the space or know what's going on, but it's false promises, or could be false promises or guarantees that they're making to you. So again, I understand the appeal. I understand if you're not versed in the space of why that's attractive. But it is really, like you were saying, Joe, it's on these companies and these firms to take just even a little bit of time and do some due diligence, related to who you're choosing to do this with. I assume a lot of folks are maybe reaching out to peers, like you said, right? So-and-so firm, have you ever done a SOC 2? Who did you go with, right? We get a lot of folks that way as well come through the door for us. One of our clients refers us to another client and they said, we've had great experience. So like, that's probably happening with these tools as well. But again, I think it's important that these companies and these firms have a little bit of skepticism to what's being promised and offered there, right? And I think, again, we haven't gone into the full details of the Delve situation, but if you really look into that and read what it's about, these companies that blew the whistle, they flat out said they felt something was wrong, right? Through these audits, they had an inkling that something wasn't right, but yet they continued on. So I put a little bit of the blame on some of these firms and these companies because they're not doing the due diligence. They're not, if you feel something's not right, say something, as we always say, the golden rule, but it's a little bit on them. I also think it's a little bit on some of the end users of the reports as well. A lot of folks come to us and ask us about SOC reporting and like, do people actually read these reports, right? Like that'll be a question we get, right? Like after you do this, are people going to actually read this? That's hard to answer, especially in today's day and age. A lot of people are using it as just like a checklist item that they have to just say, yep, we obtained it, right? Like as a part of our vendor management process, our third-party risk management process, we obtain the SOC report. We receive it in the mail, check, like, and that's it, right? Like a lot of these users or these end, readers of the report don't don't actually open it and read the details and like look into the aspects of it. So I would say both sides of it fell asleep at the wheel a little bit and just like let it happen type of situation.
What about the third, I guess so, person at the wheel that we can say is the regulators in terms of who's governing the standards of what a SOC report should be? Do you put any blame on, for pen testing, for example, in our space? There's not really a standard at all. There are in some other countries like Crest and others that are starting to do well-defined, like in European countries, of what a pen test and red team assessment should look like. But in the US, it's not anywhere near that at all. So we oftentimes have to redefine or at least put our definition of what we think a pen test is.
Yeah.
What does that look like for SOC reports, in your opinion?
It's a little bit of a mix of like the pen test side and then like I was talking about before with like the certification bodies, right? Like a PCI or a high trust audit certification has to go through this governing body who QCs everything and says, yep, this looks good, right? Like before you can push it out maybe. So the SOC side of the house is governed by the AICPA. The AICPA isn't coming in or looking at every single report a firm pushes out the door, right? So they're not QCing you've done everything fully correctly every single time. As long as a firm needs to be licensed to be a CPA firm to be able to sign off on a report. And then usually what happens is firms go through what we call the peer review cycle or process. And that's where another audit firm, another CPA firm, every 3 years-ish will come into your organization and pick a handful of our SOC reports and say, let me look at them and make sure we did what we needed to do, right? Is it up to snuff? And so there's like this peer network of peer-to-peer reviews, but not everyone goes through that, right? And that's what we're finding in some of these situations. Not everyone does that. And so again, it's not quite as organized or as governed as some of these other types of attestation reports or these other audit reports, like you were saying, Alex, and like, but not as quite as lax as it is for penetration testing, for example, so it's a little bit in the middle, but, there is some due diligence folks can do about firms to like learn more about them and like their standing before, just accepting them as an auditor, for example. Yeah.
So, should we delve into it? All right. So again, all of this is alleged, but there is this quite lengthy Substack by someone named "quote unquote" Deep Delver, and I don't know how you get this kind of documentation if you're not extremely close to this, right? It's pretty compelling, but they really go into like unbelievably sharp detail about what was going on here with what they were doing. So, Allie, do you want to give us a quick rundown on like the gist of what they were doing and why it's a problem?
Yeah. So again, they're one of these, they market themselves as one of these tools, right? That can help you get ready for the audit and then ultimately get you through the audit and pass, like again, a guaranteed audit, right? And that's what they claim. And that's what they were doing for folks. It came out that for a majority of the firms, they were using the exact same information, exact same evidence, like everything was the exact same, identical information across the board for all firms.
You could literally click accept for that, whatever their template or wording was, and you were good to go.
Exactly. Yep. So they were using some quote unquote fake data. They were using identical data for all the customers. And they were also doing, alleges they were doing pre-accepted or like pre-conclusions on evidence before evidence or things were even completed, right? They were saying, yep, you're good here before nothing had even happened yet. So everything was like kind of pre-templated out. And so they were like rubber stamping all of these reports and pushing them out the door and saying everything was good. And so it was found that I think I'm trying to remember exactly. There was like a spreadsheet that was sent out to everyone that like said your information had been like leaked or, it was, again, go to the Substack. You can read all the full details, right? But the important parts was that there was fake data used, concluded on information evidence, testing, etc., and then identical stuff. And exactly like you were saying, Joe, like some of it was templatized. And again, a lot of these tools will help you with templatized policies, procedures, so on and so forth. And they just ask you to stamp it and then you say yes. So a lot of companies were just like hitting accept, but like it wasn't anything actually about their firm, about their company, about their processes. And then they were just moving on. And so again, it was canned set of controls. So everyone had the same controls that were outlined in their reports, same results, same risk assessment, same policies, so on and so forth, and things like that. So it was like everyone was getting the exact same cookie cutter report. Again, if no one's actually reading these reports or looking at it, it's easy to see why like that could slip through and like no one would notice, right? Because like no one's actually reading them, no one notices. But that's mainly the gist of it, is they were promising you would pass the audit. They were using fake data, pre-concluded on data, even before the audit period was over that's being covered of the report, basically.
I mean, I'm trying to remember how this actually became a thing. Like, was it the spreadsheet that got leaked where it became a thing?
I think it was a spreadsheet.
I think it was a whistleblower. Yeah. I think it was one of the
all of the reports or something, and they all are the same.
Yeah, I think it was.
Happened,
yeah, I would have to go back and read the exact fine details for it, but
I think originally somehow the spreadsheet got leaked through something happened where the spreadsheet contained the links to all these other clients' SOC reports, and then the whistleblower came out and disclosed that like, hey, this is actually what's going on. So initially there was like two different events, I guess. The spreadsheet that came out and then the whistleblower Substack that revealed even more. And now in part 2, I think they said the part 3 is coming soon. So we'll continue.
But then they also said like, we're putting a pause on this.
Yeah, the alleged stuff that's coming up.
Yeah, and I mean, again, these tools, right, or these companies that are these tools that are supposed to help with the audit are not, a lot of the times they are not the CPA firm that's attached to the audit report too, right? Like a lot of these tools and these companies need to partner with CPA firms because CPA firms can only be the ones to push out SOC 2 reports. So you have to have a CPA sign these SOC reports, a CPA firm to sign these SOC reports in order for them to be legit. And so it sounded like per the Delve situation, they were working with firms overseas that were just like not even looking at the evidence, right? Like the CPA firm is supposed to be the one that's actually like reviewing the evidence, looking at it, evaluating it, giving their opinion, again, like we talked about at the beginning, right? But it sounds like, again, they were just rubber stamping like, yep, done, and it was going out the door. And that I think it also said that these, not that it matters too much in today's day and age, but a lot of these were marketing themselves as US based, I think, CPA firms, but in reality, they were overseas. Again, not as big of a deal, but like, again, just a reputation, type
like
of
a
thing.
Loophole to make a CPA office or something.
Yeah. So
with auditors, these are all cheap Indian rubber stamp firms pretending to be US-based CPA firms. Allegedly.
One of the things I was curious about is that my understanding for SOC reports is that you will have the ability as a client to establish your controls, and it's the time to show off a little bit what you're proud of, what you developed. And whenever I heard that they're essentially just customizing or making the same template over and over again, that seems like a red flag to me of if you're reviewing a SOC report and it says the same thing over and over again, that's usually not a good one in my opinion in terms of like what I just heard you say. But just curious in your perspective of what is the balancing act of how you kind of assist with designing controls? Is that part of the readiness assessment? What do you want clients to get out of it in terms of how they should feel proud of they did a good job on the SOC report, essentially?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a good point. So again, with some of those other audits that can be done, a high trust, a PCI, so on and so forth, those are very explicit requirements that have to be satisfied in order to complete the audit or get the certification or so on and so forth, right? SOC is different from that. And like you were saying, Alex, and you kind of like choose your own path forward. The AICPA sets out these trust services criteria, but they're very high level statements. Like your firm abides by ethics and integrity. It's like, okay, that's a very broad statement. Like, how do we actually do that, right? Like what steps or what processes do we have in place to actually do that? And so that's where these SOC 2 reports need to be tailored to the company or the firm in place to say, okay, how do you actually do that, right? And again, we help through what we call our readiness assessment or our gap assessment is we sit with these companies. Again, I want to be clear, like we have conversations with these companies, right? Like it's a lot of face-to-face time and inquiry and things like that to learn the environment, learn what they're doing. Yes, we come with, I would say, like a preset list of topics we want to talk about, right? Like broad topics. We're like, okay, for human resources, what are you doing, right? And like, tell me everything that you do. And then from that conversation, we will design or create this control set, these set of controls that will satisfy those broad statements that are put out by the AICPA. So again, that's a different situation, right? From the high trust, the PCIs, the ISOs, where it's a very explicit statement. You have to abide by that very explicit statement. SOC 2 is like, build your control set of how you satisfy this, and then we'll test against that. So it should be it should be tailored. It should be unique. It should be, you know, again, it's going to be a little bit, you'll have similar topics, similar controls, right? But like the way they're worded or like the way that they're covered or things like that may differ from firm A to firm B because your firms may be doing things slightly different. Like everyone's doing event log management, right? But like, how are you doing event log management? What are you using? How's it being reviewed? You know, so on and so forth. So again, every firm is going to be slightly different. So we always, when we're trying to pitch ourselves or pitch us, right? Like we like to say we are the white glove, like hand holding auditors. We're going to sit with you the whole way, make sure you understand, make sure it's tailored to you. You are getting the white glove service directed to you and your firm because we don't want to be the cookie cutter, you know, checklist type of audit, which is again, what a lot of these firms are selling you. Here's your pre-set listing of controls. Now you abide by those rather than the other way around of like, okay, you tell me and I'm going to address your audit the way you want it to be addressed, right? So it's a little bit of a different situation between the two. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did, yeah. And so choosing your own adventure, you get locked in with a template, that's it. Yeah,
exactly. What were you going to say, Joe?
No, I was just going to say, we treat you like the wonderful and individual, unique snowflake you are.
Exactly. Everyone's unique. Yep.
So I guess, yeah, this not good, right? But I mean, what does it mean? You know, how? I mean, I guess like aside from what does it mean going forward for everybody, right? Like, how can people who are not versed in this, who have, you know, never, you know, worked in audit or compliance or any of this stuff, and now all of a sudden they work for some tech startup and they need a SOC 2 or they need whatever they need, right? Like how do they weed through all of this nonsense? And it's not just Delve, right? It could be the other companies that are doing the minimum viable product for super cheap, right? Like what are they supposed to do?
Yeah, I think, you know, two things that they can do kind of right off the bat when they're researching firms and things like that is I kind of touched upon it briefly before, but number one, research to make sure that the firm is actually certified with the accounting board of the state that they're registered in, right? So you can go to your like state registry board and make sure that they actually have a license. They are a licensed CPA firm to be able to do these audits. Number one. If they're not in there, if they're not in the database, problem, red flag, maybe look into it.
Doesn't that mean they can't attest to anything if they're not?
They should not be pushing out SOC reports if they are not a licensed CPA firm, correct? Which again is why
illegal, right? Like if you're not registered, like, but you're saying you're doing it, wouldn't that just be like straight up fraud?
Basically fraud. Yeah. So again, that's why a lot of these tools or these vendors are partnering with actual CPA firms because they can't issue the reports, right? They have to be partnered with CPA firms to do it. So that's number one, check that they're licensed to even be doing it. Number two is, again, look into that peer review process we talked about, right? So the AICPA has a website that people can go to, and you can type in the firm name and it will pull up the last time that the firm was peer reviewed. And it also give you the score of the peer review. So it'll tell you whether they passed with deficiencies, right? Passed with potential problems, but not super big problems, maybe smaller problems. And then, or it's failed, right? So you pass with deficiency or you failed. So the website will show you what their last score was the last time the audit was done. Again, if they're not on there or they didn't post their score, red flag, because sometimes if they don't want to post their score, that means there's a problem also, right? Like,
yeah.
So
in a situation,
you would think that the auditing, you would think that the CPA firm that is doing the auditing of the peer would be required as part of that to report it and not rely on the people that they are auditing to self-report.
Yeah, that's true. I know that AICPA 2 just started, or maybe didn't start, but it is pushing more because of all of this. They have like a peer review oversight program. So now the people who are doing the peer reviews are also
they
being
get peer reviewed too.
Basically, like the peer
Where does it end?
Overseen by other firms, part of this oversight. So there's a lot of levels to it. But
in the situation of like Delve or these other companies, they won't necessarily be ever peer reviewed because they're really just a tool.
Because they are
their auditors. Yeah,
correct.
Would there be an easy way to differentiate? Like, would you just ask them, like, hey, who's our auditor? And, like, try to do that due diligence beforehand?
Yeah,
What
again,
would the tool be used?
Yeah, we don't have specific relationships with any of these vendors. So, like, I don't know, like, the full details of, like, how they have to disclose it. Or, like, we've been asked if we want to partner with any of them. Like, we just have chosen not to so far. But I think they would have to tell you, right, from what I've heard, is you sign up with Delve or one of these other companies to do this audit, right? And then sometimes they give you a list of CPA firms that you can then choose from, right? And so then again, maybe they don't all do that. Maybe only just some of them do. Maybe Delve only had the one that you could work with, right? Like you work with Delve, you work with this one CPA firm.
I think they had like 8 that were allegedly lying that they were US based and they're not.
And allegedly all working for the same company.
The same people, just different companies. Yeah. So, I mean, again, if they offer you the list of the CPA firms, do your due diligence on those, like Google them, right? Like look all of those ones up in the registry and in the peer review thing, right? Look all of that up. If you can't find them anywhere, I think, again, that's like a red flag, right there. But I think also it's on you if you do partner with one of these companies to ask who the auditor will be, right? Like who is the CPA firm we're actually working with? I think you have every right to ask that question before you even get into a contract with these folks so that you can kind of do that due diligence. And I would say that's probably one of the most important things when you're in the contract phase is to definitely do that.
Right. Well, you said we don't partner with any of those types of things. Is that just because of the optics, I guess you could say? It just seems like it would be another revenue stream, maybe. I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but like I would feel like the optics would be the biggest thing.
Yeah. Again, we haven't like fully. I hate Dive. Dive's very close to Delve, so I don't want to say Delve again. But we haven't fully like vetted it. I guess I would say. I think we haven't like found one specific one that we like their business model and their processes and like, yep, let's partner with them. I don't know that we want to partner with multiple, right? Like if we pick one, maybe we only pick one, maybe we don't partner with all of them. So I just don't think we've like gone through that due diligence fully yet. I would also say that literally, I think just yesterday or the day before, the AICPA just put out some guidance around partnerships between CPA firms and these companies. I forget the exact verbiage they were using.
Timely.
What was it?
Timely.
Oh, well, yes, timely. But in relation to, independence issues related to them, because like there could be some self-interest if someone's using the tool and you are auditing them using the tool and you're partnered with the tool vendor, you have a self-interest to make sure that they pass the audit, right? So like there's a little bit of layers to the independence relation between everyone involved in those types of partnerships as well. Again, that just came out. So that hasn't been, I guess, maybe top of mind for us when we were making these decisions, but now it's definitely top of mind, right? Like we don't want to get into that situation where people could suspect us of having independence issues. Like that's number one for us usually in relation to these. We don't want to have that self-interest.
I mean, would that be, so it's like, okay, like let's say you partner with a place like that, and then now all of a sudden you're the signer for the attest piece of it when it's all done, right? Like let's say that's us. if we did that. Then all of a sudden it would behoove us when people are asking, oh, who should we go through for this? And you're like, well, I hear so-and-so does a good job at it.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's like a funnel right back to whoever's making that a partnership or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, they just put out some verbiage around that and how it needs to be disclosed and how people need to be thinking about it more in relation to the audits and everything like that. So there's a lot, and going back to the discussion about costs related to these audits, right? There's a lot of what people don't recognize is there's a lot of like administrative tasks that have to happen in relation to these types of audits because it's in this like kind of regulated space. There's a lot of checklists and planning forms and planning meetings and, you know, all of this sort of like administrative risk assessments and like internal risk assessments you have to do. And a lot of this like independence related stuff comes into play in relation to that as well. So it takes man hours to do all of that and make sure, you know, again, that's what the peer reviewer looks at when they come in. Are we independent from this company that we're doing this audit for, right? Like that's going to be something they look into. And so, you know, there's a lot of steps you have to take in order to make sure you're abiding by all of the requirements to be able to do these audits as well. And again, that takes man hours and time to do that, which also increases the cost sometimes of these audits. And again, I think us and some of the other firms, peer firms, are like, how were those other types of auditors doing that for $5,000, right? Because again, it's just more time and tasks that needs to be done, and it just seems a little bit impossible. So
we have a question from our friend Mark Carroll that I'm going to ask you.
Question
coming in via LinkedIn, hot. So he says, what about vendor rotation, quote unquote? Upside is that you get a separate set of objective eyes every 3 years, roughly. Downside is you get a qualified result that clients are looking for since you trumped up your last 3 years of success. Yep. More comfortable to stay with the same vendor, but not sure that is the best security answer.
That's a great question. I think it's the same with any auditors too. Not that we don't want DenSecure to be rotated.
Yeah.
So don't put that out in the world. But
I mean, we're the best, so you might as well stay with us.
You know, as long as you're getting good results. No, I'm just kidding. I think vendor rotation can be healthy, right? You get a different perspective, a different set of eyes. If someone's been somewhere a long time, maybe they just get compliant in what they're doing and what they're seeing from you. But at the same time, I would just caution that different audit firms do things differently, right? Like they have different ways of actually performing the audit. They may see evidence in a different light than a different audit firm, like than the other audit firm may have seen it, and things like that, which again is maybe what he's alluding to with like, you could move to a qualified opinion from a different firm than like another firm may think it's unqualified. So there is that risk, certainly. I think if you feel confident and comfortable with your auditor, probably stick with them. If you have any concerns, any worries at all, maybe ask for a new one. You know, there's always the possibility too, I guess we've never actually done this, but like internally, right? Like I have my set of clients that I work with here at Wolf, but my cohorts have their own set of clients that they work with at Wolf, right? And yes, we're on the same team, we work in the same department, but maybe you just want to switch up the team so that you get, again, it's the same firm, but you get a different maybe management lead or senior on the audit, just to like get a different perspective from someone who's seen it over and over again. So that's maybe keep the same firm, but ask to just switch up the team internally so that, again, you're getting new perspectives. So it's hard to tell you, yes, move away, or no, don't move away, because like there's pros and cons, both sides of it. But those are the things that I would just kind of keep in mind or be mindful of, is moving from one firm to another just could bring up different types of issues you weren't expecting.
Like the issue of we can't do the pen test because we're also the SOC vendor. Go with another SOC vendor. No, I'm just kidding.
That is a position we have taken as a firm to make sure we stay independent. Other firms have a different perspective in relation to that. They will do both. But that's just a firm decision we have taken to make sure that, again, there's no independence issues that could be happening between.
It's for the best.
One of the questions I had was referencing back of, do people actually read the SOC reports? Yeah. And then when I was reviewing the Substack posts, like one of the concerns or risks that could be raised is that the companies that actually do and they go through and ask for evidence. So if you have these template policies of that got rubber stamped approved, and then you start digging into that of saying, okay, you say you've done a pen test, let's see your last summary results, or let's see your information security policy and some evidence that you have actually done X, Y, and Z of encryption on your assets, whatever the case is, you have EDR.
Yeah.
Is that the process what you would recommend for prospects or clients to, when they get their SOC report, to be prepared to answer that? Or if they're reviewing other SOC reports, to ask similar types of questions? Do they get pushback of how far can you at least pull on a thread to actually understand that the SOC report is legitimate, I guess is the best way I can put it?
Yeah, I think it's important to focus on specific areas of the SOC report, but maybe not, again, to read a 200-page document front to back is going to be tough for anyone, right? It's going to be too time consuming. So number one, actually, I would suggest AI is actually helpful for that, right? Like, as much as we don't want to say like AI take all of our jobs and do all of our responsibilities for us, but like it can be like helpful to pull out specific information about the report. Like, give me exactly the opinion, give me exactly the scope of the audit, right? Like it can pull out some very relevant information for you to at least get you started. But I think the important things to focus on are, have there been any findings, any exceptions that were brought up in the report? And if yes, make sure you understand what they were, why they happened, what they're doing to fix them, right? Like you can ask those types of questions for sure, especially around findings. Number two is the actual scope of the audit. I think a lot of these, the Delve situation, probably a lot of their scopes looked exactly the same, which again, should not be the case. Every firm is unique. Every company is unique. The technologies you're using, the tools you're using, like everyone's probably using something slightly different. Like everyone's using the same clouds probably, but like the tools you're using in relation to those are probably all a little bit different. So like actually read what they call section 3, which is the system description, the description of the system or the services being audited. Read that in detail to make sure it has like specifics about what the system is, what was tested, so on and so forth. And then thirdly, probably just like look for inconsistencies. I think again, with the Delve situation, there was a lot of, well, number one, typos, which a good audit firm should never have typos in their report. If it's reviewed enough times, there shouldn't be no typos. But number two is like inconsistencies, right? Like different names of different tools or systems or different frequencies. Like you said previously, you did this quarterly, but now you're doing it annually. Like what's going on there, right? Like, are there inconsistencies in the report as well? Those would probably be the areas that I would like focus on most, rather than reading the entire thing cover to cover. Sections 1 and 2 are basically cookie cutter, like they're templatized language. So like a lot of that can probably be skipped outside of the opinion. But those are the areas that I would focus on the most. I think asking for specific evidence of every single control that was tested, you know, you may get told to kick rocks about that, right? Like, I don't know that they're going to give you evidence of everything like that. But I think if there's like very specific, like, can we see your ISP? Can we see your BCP, right? Can we see your pen test results? And I think if firms don't want to be giving some of that, they could then, the alternative would be in your next SOC 2 audit, make your controls slightly more specific, right? Like we have encryption of XYZ strength. And then if the control says that, then the auditor has to test specifically that it went to that level of specificity, right? So the more specific the controls are going to be, the more specific the evidence the auditors need to obtain to test it needs to be. And so that may give more comfort as well. So it's pushing back on the firms to say, I need you to have better controls in your report next time around, right? So that I can get more information out of it.
Makes sense. All right. Closing thoughts. I think we covered it.
Trust but verify, maybe, you know, do your due diligence. I think, again, both firms asking for an audit report or needing to do an audit report, do your due diligence on the firm you pick or who you partner with for it. And then if you're a reader or an end user of a report, do your diligence to actually read the report or like give it some thought, give it some detail, you know, actually put the time in to pull the information out of it that you need to make sure that you trust what's happening at that firm, what they're doing with your data, with your information, so on and so forth. I think, again, it all comes back to that word trust and just making sure that the partnerships are strong and the firms are reputable that you're working with.
Get what you pay for. All right.
Exactly. Unfortunately, it may cost a little bit, but again, you want to make sure it's done right and it's done to a reputable standard.
Cool. All right. With that, we wrap up, I think, episode 5. Yeah.
5 right now.
Thanks, guys, for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I don't know what we're going to talk about next time. No idea. We're kind of just like building it in the air, so to speak.
Whatever's in the news at that point in time.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for coming.